There's something powerful about habits. They shape who we are far more than we realize. It's not the one-time choices that define us, but the patterns we commit to every day. Most people chase change by seeking instant results. But real transformation, it comes from consistent, deliberate effort driven by purposeful habits. Let me share with you 7 habits that don't just adjust the direction of your life. They reinvent your foundation. These are not quick hacks or trendy tactics. These are principles that reshape how you think, act, and grow. Habit 1, start with purpose. Everything begins with clarity. When you wake up and know why you're doing what you're doing, motivation becomes a byproduct. Purpose gives weight to your actions. You don't need to love every task, but when you align your life with a purpose that matters to you, even the difficult days make sense. Habit tuning. Be consistently curious. The people who grow are the ones who stay curious. Read, ask questions, challenge your own thinking. If you ever feel like you've figured it all out, that's the beginning of your stagnation. Growth is not a destination, it's a mindset. Choose to learn not because you're forced to, but because you want to evolve. Habit thirsty, speak less, listen more too often. People listen to respond, not to understand. Real communication begins when we choose to listen with the intent to learn, not to prove. Listening deeply builds relationships, trust, and wisdom. Your silence can often say more than your words if it's used wisely. Habit 14, build discipline, not motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays. Anyone can act when they feel good. But habits are formed when you show up even when you don't feel like it. The gym session you do on the hard days matters more than the ones you do when you're inspired. Discipline is not punishment, it's self-respect in action. Habit 50, focus on what you can control. Life is unpredictable. But the most powerful habit you can adopt is to pour your energy only into what is within your control. Your attitude, your effort, your reactions. The more you obsess over what you can't control, the more powerless you become. Focus inward and you regain your strength. Habit 60, surround yourself intentionally. Your environment shapes your behavior. The people you allow into your life either raise your standards or pull you down to theirs. Choose relationships that challenge you, encourage you, and call you to be better. Energy is contagious. Protect yours. Habit 7 is to reflect daily. We live in a world obsessed with movement, but growth often requires stillness. Take 10 minutes a day to ask, what did I do well today? What could I have done better? When you reflect, you develop self-awareness. And self-awareness is the foundation of all meaningful change. These habits don't work overnight, but if you practice them daily, they become second nature. And when your habits change, your life changes with them. Don't chase transformation. Build it one habit at a time. 5 keynotes of the speech. Purpose drives sustainable action. Without it, consistency crumbles. Curiosity leads to growth. Never stop learning, questioning, evolving. Listening is more transformative than speaking. It builds deeper understanding. Discipline is greater than motivation because discipline lasts. Daily reflection fosters self-awareness and intentional growth. When you look at the people who truly achieve meaningful change in their lives, there's one thread that ties them all together. They begin with purpose. It's not talent, luck, or perfect conditions. It's clarity. Clarity about why they do what they do. Most people wake up each day reacting to life. They move from one task to another, one obligation to the next, without pausing to ask the one question that gives meaning to the entire process. Why? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why does this matter to you? And when there's no answer to that question, the motivation eventually fades. You can only push yourself for so long without a reason. When you begin with purpose, everything changes. You stop chasing distractions. You stop measuring your progress based on someone else's standards. You begin to make decisions that align with something deeper. Purpose isn't about being grand or dramatic. It doesn't need to be a world-saving mission or a poetic ideal. It can be something quiet, something personal. But it must be real. If your reason is borrowed from your parents', society, or some fleeting trend, it will eventually lose its power. Real purpose connects with who you are at the core. It becomes a compass for your energy and focus. People who act with purpose are not always more skilled, but they are more persistent. They stick with the hard things not because they enjoy discomfort, but because the discomfort leads to something they believe in. If your only reason for working hard is to look successful, that's not purpose, that's pressure. And pressure without purpose leads to burnout. But when you understand your purpose, even failure feels like progress. Setbacks aren't dead ends, they're lessons that serve the bigger picture. Purpose transforms effort into meaning. We often think that we need motivation first and that purpose will come later. But it's the other way around. Purpose creates motivation. It's what gets you out of bed on the days when everything feels heavy. It's what helps you say no to things that look good but don't serve your deeper values. Without purpose, every challenge feels like a burden. With purpose, the same challenge becomes a part of the mission. People with purpose don't need to be pushed. They pull themselves. They're not driven by external validation, but by internal direction. One of the biggest mistakes people make is confusing goals with purpose. A goal is something you achieve. A purpose is something you live. Goals can change. You might reach them or miss them, but purpose stays with you. It's not about the specific job you do, the income you earn, or the titles you collect. It's about the why behind all of it. If you know your purpose, you can adapt. You can adjust your path without losing your sense of direction. But if you only chase goals without purpose, then every time you hit a wall, you'll question your value. Purpose doesn't have to be loud. It can be quiet but unwavering. It might be the desire to create, to contribute, to protect, to inspire, to uplift. It's not about how big it is. It's about how true it is. And once you find it, even the smallest task gains weight. The effort becomes sacred. The journey becomes more important than the outcome. When you show up every day with purpose, you build a life that's not just productive, but fulfilling. You stop chasing moments of happiness and start creating a foundation of meaning. When you meet people who seem to operate on another level, who remain steady in chaos and relentless in pursuit, it's not magic. They've simply committed to something greater than convenience. They've chosen to live with purpose. And when you do the same, you discover a deeper energy, one that doesn't burn out, but burns brighter with time. The habit of starting with purpose isn't something that happens once. It's a choice you make every day. You remind yourself why you began. You reconnect with the deeper reason that makes the struggle worth it. You align your actions with something that speaks to your identity, not just your image. And once you do, you'll find that the most powerful force in your life isn't motivation. It's meaning. One of the most powerful habits you can develop is learning to focus on what you can control. It sounds simple, but in practice, it's a complete shift in mindset that can change how you handle pressure, setbacks, relationships, and even your own thoughts. The reality is that much of our stress, frustration, and disappointment comes from trying to control things that are completely outside our influence. We spend energy worrying about the opinions of others, predicting outcomes we can't guarantee, or trying to change people who don't want to change. And in doing so, we drain ourselves, we lose focus, we end up feeling powerless, not because we have no power, but because we're aiming it in the wrong direction. When you choose to focus on what you can control, your effort, your attitude, your behavior, your reactions, everything begins to shift. You stop wasting time trying to fix everything around you and start building the only thing you truly have authority over, yourself. That's not a small thing. In fact, that's where all meaningful change begins. The external world will always be full of unknowns and uncertainties. You can't control the weather, the economy, the way others think or act, but you can control how you respond to those things. You can control how much energy you give them. You can decide whether to react emotionally or respond thoughtfully. That power is always yours. It's not easy. In difficult moments, our first instinct is to reach outward, to try to manage things beyond us. If someone treats you unfairly, you want to change them. If life throws something unexpected at you, you want to undo it. But the truth is, trying to control the uncontrollable is a losing battle. The more you resist what you can't change, the more it controls you. But the moment you accept that some things are simply outside of your reach, you free yourself to take action where it actually counts. That is not giving up. That is wisdom. That is choosing to be effective instead of reactive. This habit also strengthens your mental resilience. When you focus on what's within your control, you become less emotionally volatile. You don't get knocked off course by every unexpected event, because your stability doesn't depend on perfect conditions. It comes from within. Even in chaos, you stay grounded because your focus is inward. You learn to ask yourself better questions. What can I do right now? How can I move forward? What's the next small step that's within my reach? These questions reframe your thinking. They shift you out of helplessness and into ownership. In relationships, this mindset is even more essential. You can't control how others treat you. You can't force someone to love you, to respect you, or to behave the way you want. But you can control your own standards, your boundaries, and your choices. You can control how you communicate, how you show up, and whether you stay or walk away. The moment you stop trying to control the other person and start taking responsibility for your side of the relationship, you regain your power. You stop being a victim of someone else's behavior and start becoming an agent of your own well-being. Focusing on what you can control also brings clarity. It simplifies decision-making. When you're overwhelmed, it's usually because you're thinking about things that are outside your influence. But if you strip it down and ask, what part of this is mine to carry? You suddenly see a clear path forward. You may not be able to fix the entire problem, but you can take one step. And often that one step is enough to create movement. It reminds you that you're not helpless, you're responsible. And responsibility, when embraced fully, becomes one of the most empowering feelings in the world. Even in your inner world, this habit applies. You can't always control your thoughts or emotions. They show up uninvited. But you can control what you do with them. You can control whether you believe every thought that crosses your mind. You can choose to challenge the negative narrative to replace it with something more useful. You can control your self-talk, your inner dialogue, and the way you treat yourself in moments of failure. You can decide to respond to your own mistakes with learning instead of shame. That's real control, not of everything, but of the most important thing, your mind. This habit is built over time. It requires daily reminders. It's easy to slip back into trying to manage the uncontrollable because it feels like action. But the real action, the kind that produces results, is often quiet. It happens in the decision to let go of the things that don't belong to you and to own fully the things that do. It's a practice of self-awareness, self-discipline, and courage. Because it takes courage to stop blaming circumstances and start taking responsibility for your life. But once you do, you begin to move through the world with a deeper strength. Not loud or forceful, but steady and unshackable. When you step back and look at these 7 habits, you begin to see that real transformation is not about sudden breakthroughs or grand resolutions. It's about consistent, intentional living. Each of these habits is a daily choice, a mindset shift, a small action repeated over time that shapes the person you become. Starting with purpose gives your journey direction. Staying curious keeps you growing. Listening more deepens your relationships and sharpens your understanding. Discipline grounds you when motivation fades. Focusing on what you can control strengthens your resilience. Choosing your environment intentionally elevates your standards. And reflecting daily ensures you're not just moving, but moving meaningfully. These are not just life hacks, they are principles. Principles that, when lived with commitment, can change the trajectory of your life. Because in the end, it's not what we know that changes us, it's what we practice. Let these habits be your practice, and your life will become the result of that quiet, powerful work.